I believe it's time to move on to the next presentation. Thank you, Fyodor. And our next speakers are Aleksey Starchenko and Aleksey Kozlov of HEC and Institute of Linguistics. And the title of their presentation is Russian Additive E.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. So hello everybody. We are going to talk about Russian additive E, and yeah, that is a focus particle which appears to be fairly regular. Like you see the example 1, Lord even welcomes the very intention. Господь и намерение целует. And we are aiming at showing that there are several is. We present no analysis, so our presentation will be in a more empirical vein than the two last ones. So, but our main claim is that besides the garden variety of E, which is exemplified in the quotation from the Easter homily of John Chrysostom, there is one of several different is that mainly surface in negative contexts. So, and those negative polarized is have distinct grammatical properties. Yeah. So, and please notice that in this talk we are not focusing on the great number of different interpretations of E. For example, compound expressions such as еще И или И X тоже, we take them to be like totally distinct additive focus sensitive items. Preverbal E marking emphatic identity. Double E used to express coordination, like, and some other things, we take all of them to be unrelated to the additive focus E, to the additive focus particle E, at least so far. So, what we call garden variety. It was what was exemplified in 1 or is exemplified in 6. Я и Машу встретил. It is a presupposition trigger. It introduces a regular additive presupposition. It says roughly that there should be at least one true, salient, distinct focus alternative. So for 6 to be felicitous in this course, I must have met someone other than Masha. Yeah. But besides this garden variety, there are different is that also are focus sensitive, also appear to be additive particles, but have different grammatical properties. So.
We will be focusing on preverbal E, on the ability of additive E to immediately precede the verb. In cases where E is associated with a focused complex VP, like in context in 7, E has to be adjacent to the verb's complement rather than to the verb itself. And as E is a critic, this may be due to its prosodic properties, its interaction with stress. However, if the focused VP consists of the verb alone, or the sentence has narrow focus on the verb, E must precede the verb, but such sentences do not really occur to be felicitous. Example of verb only BP can be seen in 8 and in 8 and 9. In both cases, in 8b and 9b seem to be degraded, particularly compared to the similar sentences with еще и A sentences. In such examples, some speakers of Russian can accept 8 and 9b if she continues them with repeating of E, like «я опоздал» и «нахамил». However, we ask not to do it and treat it as a distinct construction. And also E, preverbal E isn't felicitous with narrow focused verb. Example 10 and 11. Sometimes similar sentences sound almost acceptable to some speakers of Russian, while being bad for others. In particular, stative verbs seem to sound better with E than dynamic ones. However, when the verb is negated, mentioned restrictions disappear. E can freely precede the complex of verb and negative particle, and it acquires a scalar flavor in this case. See examples 13 to 15. Apart from negation, hardly any downward entailing context is typical. That is typical for NPI. May license preverbal additive E. It is infelicitous under close-mate negation, example 16, in quantifiers restriction, restrictors, example 17. It may occur with an adverb редко, rarely, which licenses in Russian NPI like что бы то ни было in 19. And E is also licensed in contrastive topics marked with a particle to, and for some speakers without it. And the case with an adverb редко can be a subcase of contrastive topic licensing.
Yeah, and so that was a particular syntactic property of negative polarized additive E. It could immediately precede the verb, while the garden variety had certain difficulties in immediately preceding the verb. And let us also note that this negative polarized version of E that Aleksey has been just talking about had some scalar flavor, right? Он и не слушает. So it is the most I don't know, the most horrible thing that a person can do in response to his or her teacher's actions. It doesn't even hear. Yeah. And the garden variety, that as is typical of a general additive particle, sometimes has a contextually induced scalar flavor, but it is nothing more than an implicature, like «Моя собака и орехи кушает». Yeah, in a context where, thank you, in a context where nuts are an unlikely thing to be eaten by a dog, the implicature arises, but we can get rid of it. For example, «Моя собака и мясо кушает». My dog also eats meat, and no unlikelihood implicature. Now scale will be present in the interpretation. And crucially, when there is a scale, that regards the garden variety, when there is a scale, it is the common unlikelihood scale that orders the alternative. However, under negation, it is sometimes used in contexts where alternatives are ordered not by just unlikelihood, but by asymmetrical entailment. So they entail each other asymmetrically, like at least half of the students didn't turn up for the class, entails that at least 49% of the students didn't turn up for the class, and so on. Similarly, so that may sound peculiar, but he doesn't possess 3 cows entails that he does not possess 4 cows. And if Vasya ran a distance, and if he didn't run even a third of the distance, that entails that he didn't reach the middle, and he certainly did not reach the end, right? And it is not mere likelihood. These alternatives are truth conditionally dependent on each other in an asymmetrical way, right? And so under negation, but not without the negation, it can be used to mark that the prejacent alternative is relatively high on such a scale. Like, let us look at example 23. How was your first lecture? На пару и половину студентов не пришло. Right. Whereas на пару и половину студентов пришла, or на пару и большинство студентов пришло, in this context would be really degraded. I think roughly the necessary sense can be expressed by Ash. And similarly in 24, so if we discuss how many cows are there in some person's possession, we can say, no, у него и 3 коров нет. He doesn't even have 3 cows. But like out of the blue, we cannot say, у него и 9 коров есть. Meaning something like, у него целых 9 коров есть. He has so much as 9 cows, right? And similarly with the distance context, which given the common ground works in the same way regarding the alternatives that entails each other asymmetrically. Yeah. Yeah. So there were 3 examples where A versions with negation were good, B versions without negations were bad, and C version contained some other scalar focus sensitive item, not E, that was felicitous in this context. And crucially, the B examples can grow felicitous if the discourse context provides us some salient weaker alternative, if we have discussed not just the question under discussion, but some weaker alternative, like, does somebody have 3 cows? Yeah, he does have 3 cows. У него и 4 коровы есть. He even has 4 cows, only no one knows about that. They are well hidden. And there we note one more peculiar property of the negative polarized E. It does not require there to be a salient true alternative, unlike the garden variety. And we assume that in 26 and 27, where the discourse provides a salient true alternative, we have the garden variety. Yeah, I see the 5 minutes mark, thank you. It would be, of course, tempting to conclude that the asymmetric entailment E is licensed in the same range of negative polarity contexts that the preverbal scalar E does, but this must be premature. Redke does license asymmetric entailment E too, but some matrix negation, non-local negation, seems to be more beneficial for the symmetric entailment E than for preverbal scalar E. Compare 29 from A to C. Я не верю, что Вася такие книги открывает. Bad. Я не верю, что Вася и до середины добежал. Frankly, it is equally bad for me, but plenty of speakers we discussed it with say it is completely fine. Of course, it is not the language of Turgenev, but still, it seems more, at least more felicitous than 29A, sorry. And similar at 29C, я не верю, что на лекцию половина студентов пришла. Yeah. The familiar effect of scalar reversal seems to be licensed in non-local negation contexts. Yeah.
And now we proceed to conclusions. There is a garden variety of additive E that does not need negation, but it has two Doppler dynasts that only happen to be under negation and some other operators. We can tell them apart from the garden variety because they firstly immediately precede the verb, and secondly are used in contexts of asymmetrical entailment scales without being a silent alternative supplied by the context. Perhaps those two different E are kinds of the same particle, and further research is needed to explain the fact that they are used in a bit different contexts. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, please questions, comments, and any possible insights into what our speakers have just talked about. Can I have a little curiosity question, please? Your presentation seems to suggest that at least certain sentences with the additive E look parallel to sentences with the Russian counterpart of even, which is даже. We know from the literature that даже comes with two presuppositions. One is the additive presupposition, and the other one is a likelihood scalar presupposition. Have you had any thoughts on similarities and differences between your additive E and даже? And have you reflected on how far this parallelism extends?
Thank you. I think that this is really a very fruitful direction of thought, because one more parallel is the scale reversal that items like даже or items like even are told to exhibit in the literature. Like in negative polarity contexts, the scale that even induces is reversed, and there are theories that postulate negative polarized even, so two homonymical evens, and that really should be a parallel. And we think that the garden variety of E is only has this unlikelihood component as a conversational implicature, because it can be easily cancelled, right? But as for our two negative polarity, negative polarized is, we are not that sure. Yeah, thank you.
Well, and
yeah.
If I can add, there is one aspect we talked about, in which E seems to be distinct from Russian version of even, because garden variety of E sorry, I changed my mind. It is a thought that needs to be thought again. Sorry.
Sure, it's okay. It's okay. We have two more questions. One came from Irina Burukina.
Yes, thank you so much. So actually, Sergey has already asked my question, sort of. It was also about even, of course, like Russian даже. And I just wanted to add quickly. So I thought about those examples with ambiguous judgments that you had, right? Where you said that for you, Aleksey, those examples were like bad, but for some speakers, they're okay. And that reminded me on actually the ambiguity of judgments on даже in the very same sentence, basically. So when I tried this sentence with даже, for example, I'm also not sure whether that's okay or not, because I definitely prefer хотя бы in such context, but I can imagine that some people would like даже in these negative sentences. So I really see this like parallel even in this ambiguous case, for example. And the second note is that if you look at даже, for example, it may also be useful to look at some intensifiers, like some, because it cannot be used with verbs, obviously, but it can be used with arguments and with adjuncts. And it often also has this like interpretation. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question is from Dmitry Gerasimov. Dima, please.
I just wonder if the identificational or clefting E somehow figure into your thinking. So examples like ты ее убил.
Yeah, we even have a proof, which, sorry. That's a Zoom lag. Sorry. Continue, please.
Yeah, so examples like Tio, where we can see both superpowers, but no need for negation. So do you think it's a completely different story, or?
Yeah, well, actually we have a proof that we have actually thought about that in the section 0.2. Could you show it? We think that this identificational cleft thing is, well, maybe there can be an analysis that would unify all those various instances of E with different interpretations. But as the great Lenin said, before we unite, we must draw the demarcation lines. And we are on this stage so far.
Thank you.
There's a comment by Artyom Fedorinchik. Artyom, would you like to say something? Artyom's comment appeared. Okay. It appeared in the chat. He says that it may be useful to look at cross-linguistic data about "and" in those contexts. And Tanyenko has a question. Tanya, please.
Yes, I have a little comment. I would like to say that there is a certain difference between Russian and English, even and даже, and your E, because even or даже are compatible with topic. Whether I don't see such a, yes, it is like this, but I don't see this opportunity for E. I would say that your E is not only a word of, so to say, emphasis like даже, but it is in fact the word of focus. So there is a difference between даже and even from one side, and your E on the other.
Is it just my connection that is that bad, or?
I believe we can hear you.
Yeah, I believe I couldn't hear most of Tatiana Evgenievna's comment.
Maybe I will
write it in the chat.
I see, yeah, in the chat with you just afterwards.
Thank you, sorry.
Okay, I think we have time for one more short question. If there are no further questions, I would like to thank our speakers. Thank you, Aleksey and Aleksey.